know the Spider-Man comics at the moment are really trash, except Ultimate Spider-Man. So how can they be saved? Well, it's actually quite simple. Here is my step-by-step, short but in-depth guide on how they can be fixed and the direction that they should go in to be actually interesting again. But before we do get into that, I want to urge you guys to subscribe to the channel, join the best Spider-Man community in the entire world. We are on the road to 30,000 subscribers. I would love if we could hit that goal this year. But with that said, let's get straight into this. So in this alternate timeline, I've been put at the top of the Spider-Man comic line. What is the first thing that I do? Well, first, let's talk about some of the things that won't be changing. First of all, keep Greg Weisman on Spectacular Spider-Man. I like Spectacular Spider-Man. It's fresh, fun, and it's the only long-term comic that allows Peter and Miles to team up together, so keep that going. Also, keep the Miles Morales run going on at the moment as well. I don't believe there's really any reason to touch that. Okay, with that very short segment out of the way, let's get to the stuff that I will change. First things first, get Spider-Gwen gone from the 616 universe. She has officially moved into the 616 universe, if you guys don't know, and it's a huge mistake. Spider-Gwen being here only increases the chances of one of two things happening. Number one, she ends up dating Miles Morales, and two, she has some interaction with Peter Parker. Both of them are detrimental to the character, and I'll explain why. Number one, dating Miles Morales is an absolute mistake if they end up going down that road, because that is already happening in the Spider-Verse films. Tell new and interesting stories instead of doing something that's already been done in a movie. Tell stories that can be adapted by movies maybe 10 or 15 years down the line. Don't adapt something that's been done in a movie. This is not the way round it's meant to be. Secondly, if she ends up becoming pally with Peter Parker, which very well might happen, it comes severely close to undoing the death of Gwen Stacy because Peter will have her in his life again. We want to avoid tampering with that as much as possible. The second thing we're going to completely scrap is Jackpot and Black Cat's comic book. Just completely get rid of it. Like, don't even end it, just cancel it. Pretend it never existed. We are then going to replace it with another Mary Jane related comic, a miniseries, but this time it's going to focus on MJ and Paul's relationship more than anything. Now, put your pitchforks down. Just let me explain. Everyone hates Paul because Peter and MJ broke up, of course, but I wouldn't have any problem with Paul if he was actually a good character. If you're going to make an unpopular decision, at least make what follows good. And the issue that MJ has at the moment is that she isn't being written well, and the person that she left Peter for is a completely one-dimensional character. We are going to change that in this miniseries. We're going to have a Mary Jane comic that primarily focuses on their relationship and expands Paul's character, giving him lots of depth. I imagine this comic would also expand on the disappearance of MJ and Paul's kids from the early Zeb Wells comics, and use that as leverage to write emotional stories. Also, in this series, MJ's powers will be limited. If she gets a power using her roulette wheel, she is stuck with that power for 10 minutes and can't change it. This increases the tension and the stakes of the overall story, and I just think having MJ's powers be limited ever so slightly could make things a whole lot better. This series will come to its eventual conclusion when MJ's powers start taking a toll on her and Paul's relationship. After all the pain that they've gone through, they start fighting, taking out their anger on each other. This eventually ends in a sad but mutual split between the two, deciding that their pasts remain too traumatic. MJ in the final panels of the story will finally get rid of her powers, choosing to lead a normal life once again as to not hurt anyone else that may end up coming into her life. And that's the end of the Mary Jane miniseries, but now to tackle the third and final thing, the biggest of them all, the Amazing Spider-Man run. I see a lot of people saying, just get Mephisto or Mysterio to reverse everything and say it was all a dream, but what a lot of people don't understand is that decision would just be as bad as the whole run up until this point. Two wrongs don't make a right, and if you're going to fix this story, you have to do it properly. For the purpose of this video, we are only 51 issues in, so I'm going to be fixing it from this point on. After everything is settled with the Green Goblin, I would make sure Norman Osborn isn't coming back. I'd have him sacrifice himself for Peter to save him from the Goblin or something along those lines. Norman is finally done, and he's never coming back. I would then take the time to reform Ben Reilly in a mini 3 to 4 issue arc, which sees Ben get back to basics and kind of overcome everything that happened with Chasm. Once Ben Reilly is back to Scarlet Spider status, I would have him continue his new story in a Scarlet Spider spin-off series, which hopefully would do well, inviting fans of the character back in for a fresh new start. Once that is all fixed, we tackle the main problem, which is getting Peter Parker back to how he should be. I would first set up an arc for him to go through based off what happened with Norman Osborn. I would have him develop trust issues, blaming himself for everything that happened with the Goblin, thinking he could have prevented it if he just didn't trust him sooner. I'd have these trust issues affect him to the point where he closes off so much from his personal life that people really start worrying about Peter. One of the people in particular will be Aunt May. This is when we will introduce Mysterio to the story. Mysterio will want to get back at Peter after years of losing to him, and will start giving him visions of the Green Goblin and his past mistakes through new technology. Peter's unforgiving insecurities will lead him to not pursue the answers to these visions, locking himself away once more. However, Mysterio goes on a rampage, finding out little details of Peter Parker's life and finding out who he loves dearly. And this, of course, will eventually lead to the death of Aunt May. I know Aunt May's death has been done 1,000 times, but she will finally kick the bucket here. This will be the point in which our story flips, and at this point in time will kind of act as a second responsibility moment for the character. I imagine this being a meta-reflection on how far the character has fallen from grace, and this is the moment in his life which will make him realise that he needs to get back on the horse. Peter, enraged, will seek out Mysterio and will defeat him once and for all. And this is where the series will get a brand new #1, a fresh start, and this is the brand new direction for the character. This #1 will see Mary Jane be drawn back into Peter's life after the death of Aunt May, being there for him and comforting him all the way. After a bit of back and forth as to whether they think they can make it work, they eventually decide to get back together full time, saying that they will never leave each other's side ever again. I'd also like to introduce new villains at this point as well, to move on from old villains that have been relentlessly overused in the last few runs. With this, everything has kind of been reset back to square one. Loose ends have been tied up, stories have been complete, and we've got a brand new direction. This way, we are heading in a familiar direction, but also fresh at the same time, pulling elements that worked so well in the comics from the 90s and 80s, whilst also introducing new villains and new stories. I'd also like to point out that as time goes on, I'd push Miles Morales more to the forefront as the New York's main Spider-Man, acting as the younger, more youthful version of the character, and start telling stories from Peter's future, about his child, his marriage with MJ, and kind of maybe making him take more of a back seat. But that's how I would fix the Spider-Man comics. Here you can watch my video on issue 50 and what I currently think about the current run. Thank you so much to the members for supporting the channel. You guys are absolutely incredible, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.